Good morning, everybody. It is the top of the hour, 9 o'clock. Let's go ahead and jump in and get started right away. So, if it is your first time joining, I'm Tony Best. This is my good friend, Christine McHugh, and we are a few weeks into this live cast now. So, if it is your first time joining, just a reminder, there are no slides. So if you're not seeing any, you're not missing any. This is a live and raw conversation, intentionally focusing on the things that we are seeing, that Christine and I are seeing in our organizations and in our networks, that leaders are asking about, that we are seeing a need for. And so today we are talking about the topic of recognition and closely tied relative of appreciation. So good morning, Christine. Thank you for being here. Anything you'd like to add before we jump into our topic for today?
No, good morning, and Tony, good morning, everyone else. I'm looking forward to getting into the dialogue.
Excellent. Well, and so recognition, such a really important topic. I think if there's any leaders that aren't thinking about recognition at this point, has been a big topic in the world of culture and leadership for several years now. So, at this point, we're thinking about it a lot in the realm of just leadership in general, but also in this remote leadership time of not being quite as closely tied to our employees. So start us off, Christine. Tell me your high-level thoughts on recognition and what we're facing today. What are you hearing?
Yeah, it's interesting because, certainly having been worked in organizations and also been a leader for so long, I understand and appreciate the value of recognition. And I know that it is something that is both individual and team oriented, that as a leader, you generally recognize the things, the behaviors and the actions that you want to reward more of. And that it's individualized, right, too. So some people prefer more public displays of recognition, and others just want a simple thank you for really putting so much effort into this project. I can see that you took a lot of thoughtful time, and some people, really more value that. So knowing that individual needs. So those are things that I've been, trained on and that I've endeavored to embody my whole career. I think what's interesting around this time is that, one, as you already mentioned, Tony, people are not seeing each other face to face. So some of the more spontaneous, informal acts of appreciation, from a walk by, a conversation in a meeting, may not be happening with the same level of frequency. So that's one thing. I also think that organizations could potentially inadvertently tip to recognizing for heroics without acknowledging all of the, for lack of better words, keep the lights on activity that needs to happen. And so I was talking with a colleague recently about what they were doing for recognition in their organizations, and they were, trying to use the tools that they usually use. But I asked if they're doing anything different, and the only thing he said was recognizing the heroes. And I just thought that is really important, to recognize people who are going through extra effort, as long as it's not at the expense of, others needing recognition. So back to your question, there's some core principles around recognition that have always been there, but I think this remote environment means you don't see people as often, and you might potentially risk as a manager of recognizing what's happening in the moment where people are solving for more urgent situations. And potentially could risk overlooking the core work that is happening. So those are a couple initial thoughts. You
just made me think of one of my favorite books, Radical Candor. Have you read it? Okay, so one of my favorites. And so in this book, Kim Scott talks about, rock stars and superstars, and how oftentimes leaders think we need lots and lots of superstars, or that the recognition needs to land on those superstars because they're performing all of these heroics. But in reality, the business is running day to day, and everything that's happening day to day is typically quietly happening with those rock stars. And so those are the people that are just solid, doing the work, getting it done. And that it's really just as important for us to recognize that, because they are keeping the lights on and running the business on a day to day. And that's not saying that the superstars aren't too, but I think a lot of leaders do index heavily on recognizing the superstars and acts of heroism, or the staying up all night to get something done because it was urgent. And when we do that as leaders, whether it's intentional or not, we definitely set out this idealistic perception that that's what we're looking for, is heroics, right? So I think it's important to recognize those things, because they are the things that oftentimes make the business leap forward, or just perform some act that is necessary in that moment. It's definitely important to recognize that day-to-day work. So, in your time as a leader, what have been the things that have been really impactful for you? Like thinking back to, the way that you've recognized people, or even when you feel like you haven't done a great job, what are those things that stand out to you?
That's a good question. It's funny because I had a tendency just personally to be kind of stingy with recognition as a leader. And I'm embarrassed to say it, but it's the truth. And because I did fall a little bit in those patterns of like, if people are doing their job, then, yes, I appreciate them and thank them, but I don't, why should I recognize? But then I realized, as I became more experienced, that that recognition and appreciation, even for doing their job, is important to kind of reinforce that they're on the right track. So just admitting, that was one of my tendencies. But I think that, the recognition that's been most meaningful to me as a leader, like when I've been recognized, is usually with meaningful work. Like I would want a big plum assignment, or to be temporary cover my boss while she's on vacation, or something that actually recognized my leadership skills and their commitment to me in the organization. So as a leader, I was that was a source of recognition that really fed me. For my teams, I would say that's where it became very individually based. And right now, some of the stories that I've heard, at least are happening in the current environment, is which is an idea I really love, is a lot of surprises and delights for people, like a spontaneous, we're going to recognize you all for your hard work, or that you just need a break, and we want everybody to take Friday off. I've heard that from several organizations that are doing that. I love that idea. Or an idea of every manager in the organization is recognizing or thanking 3 people every day. So those are some tactical things that I think can come as unexpected, yet very much appreciated in the current environment. So I think those are a couple of ideas, and I'd love to hear some things that you've experienced and things that you've seen in your organization or in other organizations.
Yeah, I think that just speaking to the things that you brought up there, Christine, there's I love the whole team take a day off, and you can be kind of non-specific about that. When I say non-specific, I mean everyone's working really hard. You've put in a lot of hours on this project. Everybody take Friday off, right? I think when we're doing even the thanking 3 people, or recognizing 3 people in some way, that the recognition needs to be pretty specific so people understand what they're being recognized for, right? So we use a pulsing and a recognition tool, and we had a leader once who used to send the most cheers to anyone. Every day there were 3 different cheers going out. They were really non-specific, like, you're so awesome, thanks for your hard work. And the first couple of times you get that, it gives you this little hit of dopamine. You feel loved and cared for. But when you get those all the time, you don't understand why. And so I think it's really important in recognizing people. We use, and we actually train everybody on this in onboarding. We use the situation plus behavior equals impact methodology of, in this situation, I witnessed you doing this. This is the impact that it had. And so people really understand, like, oh, when I do those things, it has this positive impact. That works for critical feedback as well, right? When we need to improve something, but just understanding the specificity of what am I being recognized for and why am I being recognized, so that when that feels good to do that, I can repeat that. And so, both of those things, whether it's just kind of a broad, y'all have been working so hard, here's something great for you, or like, these are the specific things that I want you to know are great about what you're doing. Thoughts on that?
Totally agree. I think about the last organization I was at, or even ones that I've worked with as clients, is, there's definitely, in a lot of cases, a lot of high fives, a lot of thank yous. And as I worked with leaders to, really work on timeliness and specificity of what the person did and why it was impactful, to repeat the behavior. And I remember getting into a conversation with one leader a couple of years ago, who I asked him, he said, "You did a great job, Christine." And I said, "Well, great, thanks. But what did I do that was so good?" And he's like, "Well," and he started to tell me, and I said, "Now, what do you think was better? The first one, you did a great job, or this one?" And he had come from a place where just saying great job, yes, it feels good, but like trying to build his skills of actually getting into really describing the behavior so it could be repeated. And then I'd add, as I mentioned, timeliness, because if you combine lack of specificity and lack of timeliness, people have no idea what they've done. So, and when they did it. So I would add those things. And then if you're thinking more recognition in the terms of outside of an appreciation or a verbal or written recognition, but you're actually thinking about, you want to do something special for somebody, that's really when it comes to the personalization. What is it that's meaningful to that person, that that shows that you really care and have paid attention to them as a human? So yeah, definitely specificity and timeliness. And then I would also add that the personalization piece.
Yeah. This is recognition is something that we, at Aduro, we have what we call a one-page strategic plan, and it has our main KPIs on it. It has our objectives and key results that we're focused on for the year. It's very grounded in our culture. And there's actually 2 places on there that we measure recognition and how recognized people feel. And, one is an algorithm from our pulsing and recognition tool to see, these questions that are connected to recognition. How are people feeling? And the other one is a survey that we send out 4 times a year, where the question is pretty specific. It's a 1 to 5 scale, and I know I will be recognized for good work. So just the super specific around how they feel about recognition directly. And thinking about the fact that we measure that in 2 ways, and we're looking at it at an ongoing basis. I looked up just some stats in case people don't think that recognition is really important. Tiny Pulse did an engagement report that said 79% of employees don't feel strongly valued for the work they put in. Socialcast had a stat of 78% of US workers report that being recognized motivates them at their job, while 69% said they'd work harder if they felt their efforts were better appreciated. And Burson says companies with recognition programs that are highly effective at improving employee engagement have 31% lower voluntary turnover. So those are, 3 really big stats about recognition and appreciation. And there's so many forms of recognition and appreciation. I'm thinking about companies right now that are being really impacted by COVID-19. And if they can't give spot bonuses or some kind of monetary recognition, what can they do to just make people feel recognized for the work that they're doing? So I thought up a couple of things that we do at Aduro. And all of you out there who are viewing and listening, if you have things that you are doing that you have found really effective in recognizing others, please use the chat here to put in what you do that you feel like has been really effective. We just thinking about things that we do on a on a regular basis. And there's irony in this next one that I'm going to say. Birthdays and anniversaries, we do handwritten cards from the founders. And so not just signed cards, but a personalized message. Now, you know, we only have to do 250 of those a year. So, you know, for those of you who might have to do more, that's a lot, but I guess that's about 500. We do birthdays and anniversaries, and I have a box of them sitting here next to me that need to be mailed out because I'm not seeing those people every day. But, you know, we do those handwritten cards just for kind of those key things of it's my birthday and you remembered. It is, you know, my anniversary and you recognized something that I've done that was meaningful to the organization, right? And or how I show up in the organization. And so I think handwritten notes are not as common as they used to be, and it's just a nice change to how you can recognize somebody. And I think you know, probably besides having a tool where people can recognize each other on a regular basis, we started doing something before this COVID-19 thing hit, but it's become increasingly important now. We have a weekly all company meeting on Fridays, and we reserve the last 5 minutes of that meeting for people to do live. We have passing the torch and live cheers. And so the passing the torch is an award that's given from one, we call our employees fire starters. So given from one fire starter to another fire starter based on the contributions that they've made. So they're giving them live, very public recognition for what they do for the organization and why they're doing it. And then, you know, people can raise their hand in the video conference or type into the chat who they want to recognize that week and for the work that they've done. So let's see, we got a couple of chats in here.
Definitely the handwritten cards sounds like,
yeah.
I see that from Brianna. If somebody sent Brianna one, and then Leslie and Joseph have sent cards that it sounds like they're having a huge impact because we don't get mail anymore unless it's a bill.
Right?
Yeah. And it's interesting. A few weeks ago, I got a handwritten card from a woman I used to work with probably 5-8 years ago, who we follow each other on LinkedIn and Facebook. And she sent me a card, wanted to thank me for just providing some uplifting moments for people in our LinkedIn community. And I was shocked and very much appreciated, and actually prompted me to write a handwritten card to somebody to thank them for some of the things that they had been doing. So that sounds like that's a practice that cannot be underestimated. And I love Joseph says, purchase dinners for employees from local and family restaurants. I've also heard of companies buying lunch. Since you're not going out to lunch with a team member, can you send them lunch, you know, through Uber Eats or buy from a local restaurant or something like that? So those are some really fantastic ideas.
Yeah, I love it. I love these, you know, sending people things in the mail and how delighted we are right now about getting mail. My husband and I have a joke of, you said, you know, you usually only get bills, and when the mail comes in, one of us will say, did anybody send us money today? Everyone's just asking us for money, right? But even I think more than if someone sent me money in the mail, just like a really personalized note is something key that we can do. Something that I do in our team meetings that I'm actually going to start asking more from this perspective. In our one-to-one notes, there's a question of who have you observed doing something great that deserves a cheers from me? So it kind of brings the things that people are doing around the organization so that we can recognize people for things that they don't even know that we know that they've done them, right? So trying to surprise and delight them with knowing that they're doing these great things. But, you know, in our team meetings each week, we kind of ask, like, is there anybody that you know that needs a little extra support that we should reach out to, do a well-being check? And I haven't been doing this, but I'm going to add it this week of, you know, who do you know that deserves a little extra kudos and attention for the great work that they're doing? So I think that both of those things are, you know, we got to give the support and the recognition collectively. Start a gratitude conversation. Use team meetings to share who or what you are grateful for within the team. I love that, Leslie. That is really great. Looks like
You
there's
mentioned
something in
Tony,
the
just on the
Q&A.
topic of mail. I might have mentioned this probably in our first, or potentially our first webcast, but a colleague of mine that's in China, one of the things that she did is, when they were dealing with this several months ago, is she just had a surprise delivery of fresh oranges delivered to each of her team members or direct
Mm.
reports home. Totally unexpected. It was tangible, something they could enjoy for the next, few days. And I love that. And, not always practical in all organizations and, depending on the scope of the team, but those little things just really, it sounds like it made a huge difference.
Yeah, I love it. It sounds like the tangible things right now where we don't have as much human contact are the things that are really delighting people. Loretta says she sent birthday cakes during Corona lockdown. I love that.
I love that idea. How fun would that be to receive a birthday cake?
Right, right. I agree. Um, I would love to hear anybody who's out there listening. What recognition have you received that has been meaningful to you? So if there's anything, not necessarily that you have done, but that someone else has done for you that has felt meaningful, I would love it if you would type it in, and we can see what else is going on out there. Don't be shy. I think, while we're waiting to see if anyone has some ways that they've been recognized, there were a couple other stats that I pulled up about like people who feel recognized or that were recognized within the last 3 months. 89% feel effectively appreciated by their supervisors. 83% feel their level of recognition is satisfactory. 90% feel that their managers effectively acknowledge and appreciate them. 76% love their jobs. So more frequent recognition equals more employee happiness. I think that that kind of says it all, right?
Yeah, I have a stat that is interesting, that 67% of managers think they do an above average job in recognition or praise, but only 23% of workers agree. So yeah, like that's, again, it's like it's the example story I gave about myself. Like if people are doing their job, early on, especially as a leader, I was like, well, yeah, thank you, but why do I recognize it? Well, I thought I was doing a great job recognizing people,
Yeah.
but only 20% of my team would agree. So it's just an important reminder to, like, you think you've done enough, do it some more.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think too, just about, we've had a lot of conversations about building trust and what kind of relationships are you building with your people. And, I think, if you've built good trust and good relationships with people, and then you ask them, how recognized do you feel? Like I think it's one thing to survey them, but just asking them, do you feel recognized? Do you feel appreciated? What actually makes you feel recognized and appreciated? It kind of makes me think of the 5 love languages that was then, kind of reoriented towards the workplace, of the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. If you know how people that are on your team like to be recognized, let's see if I can remember some of them: words of affirmation, gifts, acts of service. And everybody has a little different way of like really feeling recognized. So if you can personalize it, back to one of the very first things you said, if you can personalize that act of recognition to the way that your people feel recognized the most, I think that's a really beautiful thing. Let's see, Charlene received a mini fake Dundee trophy from the office that said best boss ever. That's great. Loretta, a handwritten card specifically saying thanks. Also received a Christmas gift from C's saying my boss would not have been able to accomplish everything if I had not been involved. That's really cool too. Margarita said during our annual HR conference, we had peer recognitions. We sent them in advance and the CHR read them out loud before going to breaks, both recognized and who was recognizing were presented. So it felt extra nice. Piece of conversation during the break as well. Jansen says, feeling valuable makes me feel recognized and appreciated. when recognition is specific to how I've added value to something bigger. Yeah, I think tying recognition back to the team's goals, the company's goals, or the mission and values of the company, I think is really really great as well. We had our design team on our marketing team create these core values cards that people can write when they're in the office, and then we made them digital. So like when you send out a note to somebody, you can also attach a core values card and basically say, you know, I saw you being curious, and this is how you know, the impact that had. So I think those are really great ideas and examples as well. We do annual awards at Aduro that are based on core values that the entire company votes on. And when we present those awards, we read out the comments that people had written about people, and that people really like that as well. And some of the teams have taken that upon themselves to do their own internal kind of you know, more frequent recognition where they're recognizing each other for living out the core values. I think that's great as well.
I would say a lot of pretty much the majority of the recognition programs at Starbucks were tied to the core values of the company. And Starbucks also had little recognition cards like that with the core values on them. And then there was some awards, like the Spirit of Starbucks was reserved for very special occasions that demonstrated the values, and those could be nominated peer to peer too. So it was super powerful. Like getting a Spirit of Starbucks was definitely like, you know, a big deal. I'm sure it still is too. One of the things that I was thinking as I was seeing some ways people are being recognized roll in, I did occur to me another example of one time my boss gave me a gift just thanking me for some hard work and a well-done project by making a donation to one of the charities that I support in my name. And that was super meaningful because it was an organization that I really was, really believe in and was important to me. And the fact that she paid attention enough to know that, and was as meaningful as the donation itself. So.
I love it. I love it. Well, here we are again, Christine. We've got 3 minutes to wrap up. And as usual, it went by really fast. So I would love some, you know, some key juicy nuggets that you're taking away with you today to leave our listeners, viewers with. What's standing out to you?
Well, it wasn't original, like it's something that came up was all the value of handwritten notes. Like, I love that. So I wrote that down, and I want to do more of that. And I encourage the rest of us to continue the practice if we're doing it, and start the practice if we haven't, because it sounds like it's had such a huge impact. The second point is recognize and show appreciation a lot, and a lot more than you think you're doing. So if you think you're doing plenty, do it again. Create this culture of recognition and appreciation by getting peers involved is super important. And I love the element of surprise. That was also a theme today. So surprising people with a birthday cake, or surprising them back to the handwritten note, but something that's personalized and meaningful to them is going to have a resounding impact. And then the last thing I'd add is really to be specific. You know, you brought that up, Tony. So what they did, why and how it was impactful. So you can give people a sense of what it was that really contributed to the success and their result of them being recognized. So those are a few things I would add, but I'm going to get busy writing some handwritten notes today. Tell me that.
Me too. Me too. I got to catch up on my birthday and anniversary notes, first of all, but I think, you know, keys for me, I love everything that you said. I would just, you know, highlight each one of those. And I think, you know, back to I feel like I do a lot of recognition and appreciation, but there's also a lot of things that I do that are kind of a habit, which habit is good in some ways. And in other ways, it means that it's not personalized or always like catching the most meaningful things. So the big takeaway beyond everything that you said there that I want to take away is to go back and check in with everyone on my team and kind of find out, like, what are the things that are helping them feel appreciated and recognized, and where do they feel like they're missing things, and make sure that we kind of fill in those gaps so everybody knows how much we love and appreciate them for the work that they're doing, and doing it so well during this crazy time that we're in right now. So Brianna needs to write more handwritten notes. I love it. Recognition is valuable if specific for behavior, and a handwritten note, super meaningful. Thank you, Loretta. I love that. So thank you, everybody, for being attentive and present with us today. And thank you, Christine, for your wisdom and bringing all of your experience and examples as well. And as always, I've enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to talking to you again next week.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Take care.